In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. Rain hammered the roof of the old animal shelter, pounding out a rhythm that seemed to echo Marley's heartbeat. Each drop sent little rivers along the cracked concrete, pooling beneath cages lined up in the pale morning light. Somewhere far down the row, a golden dog with tired eyes pressed himself beneath a weathered wooden bench, hoping to stay dry. His fur, once bright as honey, was now matted and dusted with flecks of gray, a living record of time spent waiting. Marley had watched this scene for years, always from the same spot, the forgotten corner, where hope and loneliness grew side by side. Through the metal bars, he saw the world come and go, in seasons, families bursting through the shelter doors with laughter. Children tugging at parents' sleeves, voices full of promise. Sometimes someone would pause at his cage. Marley would hold his breath, searching their faces for a sign. But the moment always slipped away, and so did they. The storm outside felt different today. The air was thick, carrying the tang of wet earth and distant thunder. Each flash of lightning sent shivers through Marley's aging bones, but it was more than fear. Beneath it all, there was a strange electricity, a quiet signal that change was coming. Marley couldn't name it, but something deep inside him stirred. As the shelter staff moved through their morning routines, Marley's gaze stayed fixed on the entrance. He barely noticed the other dogs barking, or the way his own cage rattled in the wind. He was lost in a silent prayer, wish whispered in the language of all lonely creatures. Let today be different. Let someone see me, just once. As thunder rolled above and hope seemed thin as mist, Marley had no idea that everything he knew was about to be turned upside down. All he knew was that he was still waiting, and somehow, against all odds, he still believed. Marley's world was small, but rich in memories and meaning. He lived at the far end of the shelter, in a kennel shaded by the sprawling arms of an old oak tree. In summer, sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting the concrete floor with shifting patterns of gold and green. In winter, the wind found every crack, and Marley would curl up tight in his thin blanket, drawing warmth from dreams more than reality. His kennel wasn't much, just for wire walls and a gate that squeaked each time a volunteer walked by. Still, Marley found comfort in the small things: the steady drip of the leaky faucet, the faint smell of fresh hay laid down by kind hands, the soft hum of the fridge in the staff kitchen down the hall. These familiar sounds and scents became his lullaby year after year. The other dogs came and went. Puppies arrived, scared and shivering, then vanished just as quickly into the arms of new families. Marley would watch through the bars, his tail thumping softly as hope rose and fell with every visitor. Some people stopped to greet him, offering a treat or a gentle word, but their eyes would always wander to the younger dogs, so full of energy and promise. Still, Marley never grew bitter. He was gentle by nature, never barking for attention or fighting for space. The staff adored him, calling him the old soul and sneaking him bits of chicken from their lunches. Sometimes, late at night, when the shelter was quiet, a volunteer would sit by his kennel and tell him stories about their lives, as if Marley were a trusted friend. He listened, brown eyes wise and soft, his heart quietly collecting all these pieces of other people's happiness. But every evening, as the sun slipped behind the oak tree and the shelter grew still, Marley's longing returned. He would press his nose to the cool metal of the gate, watching the last light fade. He dreamed of grassy yards and soft voices calling his name. He wondered what it felt like to belong to someone, to have a home that wasn't just a place but a feeling. For Marley, hope was the thread that stitched his days together. Even after so many years, he refused to let go of it. With every sunrise, he greeted the world with quiet patience, believing somewhere deep inside that his time would come. The rain continued, steady and unrelenting, as the hours of that Tuesday slipped by. Inside the shelter, the staff moved with a quiet urgency. Leaks had started to drip from the ceiling tiles, and the old fluorescent lights flickered with every distant rumble of thunder. A feeling of restlessness hung in the air. Even the puppies, usually a chorus of excitements subdued by the gloomy weather, Marley lay near the front of his kennel, watching the world through the shimmering veil of raindrops clinging to the wire. Each sound was sharper today. The squeak of boots on wet linoleum, the shiver of the wind rattling the door, the lonely hush that settled in the breaks between thunder. Then, in the early afternoon, something unexpected happened. The shelter's front door burst open, blown inward by a gust of wind, and the arrival of a figure wrapped in a soaked hoodie. She was a girl, maybe 16, cheeks flushed with cold, a backpack pulled tight against her chest. Her hair was plastered to her face, and her sneakers squished with every step. There was something fragile about her, but also determined a look that said she'd braved more than just the storm outside. The staff approached, ready to offer her shelter from the rain, or a towel to dry off, but she shook her head and only asked, quietly, "Can I see the dogs?" She moved slowly down the rows of kennels, pausing at each gate, whispering gentle words to the animals that crowded forward for attention. Marley watched her approach, feeling a strange tension coiling in his chest. Would she pass him by like everyone else, or would she see him, really see him? The girl stopped at Marley's kennel. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she knelt on the wet concrete, letting the rain soak into her jeans, and looked into Marley's eyes. There was something searching in her gaze, something that flickered between hope and sadness, as if she recognized a piece of herself reflected back. With a shaky hand, she reached out, palm open. Marley hesitated, as he always did. Trust had become a cautious thing, built slowly over the years. But the girl remained still, her hand never wavering, her eyes gentle and unwavering. Inch by inch, Marley moved closer, until his nose brushed her fingers soft, uncertain but real. For a moment, time seemed to pause. All the sounds of the shelter faded, and the rain became a distant hum. Marley looked at the girl, and the girl looked back, two lonely hearts colliding in the smallest of gestures. It was the beginning of something neither of them fully understood. But deep inside, Marley sensed that the storm outside was nothing compared to the change stirring in his world. For the first time in years, Marley felt something bloom inside him, a fragile hope he didn't dare name. Every afternoon that week, just as the sky darkened and the rain tapped a steady beat against the windows, the girl returned. She always came alone, her backpack hugged close, her hair still damp from the storm. No one at the shelter knew much about her, and she offered no details. All she wanted was time with Marley. The staff grew curious. Some whispered quietly, wondering about her story, but no one pressed for answers. The girl was gentle with all, the dogs, but Marley was the one she sat beside for hours, talking softly or simply sitting in silence, fingers tracing slow circles through the wire. She never rushed him, never coaxed him out. Instead, she let Marley choose letting trust grow in its own time, one slow heartbeat at a time. On the fourth day, as thunder grumbled low in the distance, Marley did something he hadn't done in years. When the girl knelt by his kennel, he pressed his muzzle against the gate, tail thumping nervously. She smiled, eyes shining, and reached through the bars to gently scratch behind his ear. Marley closed his eyes and leaned into her touch, feeling the warmth spread through his old bones. It was a moment of quiet magic, so small and ordinary, yet so monumental for a heart that had waited so long. But outside their bubble of hope, the world carried on. The shelter's cages were filling up, space was tight, the rain made adoptions rare, and the volunteers worried about what would happen if more animals arrived. Marley's age was working against him. Too old, they said. To quiet, not what most families were looking for. Whispers of tough decisions hung in the staff room. Still, the girl came every day, rain or shine. Sometimes Marley saw sadness in her eyes, a heavy shadow, like she was carrying her own secret storm. One evening, she arrived late, cheeks streaked with tears, her voice small, as she told Marley, "I wish things were different. I wish I could take you home." Marley didn't understand all her words, but he felt the ache behind them. He pressed himself close to the gate, offering silent comfort, letting her sadness become part of his own. They sat together in the dimming light, two lonely souls sheltering from the rain. As the week ended, the girl hugged Marley for the first time, whispering, "I have to go soon, but I promise I won't forget you, not ever." She slipped a faded blue ribbon her own tied from the strap of her backpack through the wire and onto Marley's collar, a piece of her to stay with him, no matter what. And then, just like that, She was gone. The shelter felt colder. The rain sounded harsher. Marley watched the door long after closing time, ears pricked for a voice that never came. For the first time in years, the ache of waiting was joined by the sharp sting of loss and, yet somehow, also a flicker of hope that still refused to die. Days blurred into one another as the rain kept coming, drumming against the shelter's roof like a relentless reminder of everything Marley had lost. Without the girl, the world felt emptier. Marley waited by the gate each morning, tail still, eyes scanning every shadow. Staff tried to cheer him up with treats and kind words, but the old light in his gaze had dimmed. The blue ribbon at his collar was a quiet promise one Marley clung to as the days grew longer, lonelier. One evening, as a violent storm rolled across the sky, the shelter bustled with anxious energy. The electricity flickered, thunder rattled the windows, and everyone hurried to check the kennels. In the chaos, the front door creaked open again, not with the rush of a teenager this time, but with the slow, determined steps of a woman. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright, searching. In her hands, she held a small stack of folded letters, edges worn from being read and reread. Staff greeted her, and she explained, softly, "My daughter wrote to me every day about an old dog, Hera dog, with golden fur and the saddest eyes. She always talked about him." Marley's ears perked up. He pressed himself against the bars as the woman approached. She stopped, knelt down, and pulled something from her pocket, a faded blue ribbon, nearly identical to the one around Marley's neck. Her voice trembled with memory and longing. "My daughter wanted to bring you home, but we had to move away. She never stopped thinking of you. When we returned to town, the first thing she begged was for me to come find you." The woman's eyes shimmered with tears as she unlocked Marley's kennel. For a moment, neither moved his souls on the edge of something new and terrifying and wonderful. Marley's heart thundered. He hesitated, then took a step forward, then another. He felt the warmth of her hand on his head, the steady thrum of her heartbeat, and the quiet echo of a promise kept through distance and time. The twist settled in as the woman gently fastened her daughter's ribbon beside Marley's. "You're not forgotten, not by her, not by me." The storm outside faded to a hush as Marley, trembling with disbelief and relief, finally stepped out of the cage that had been his world for so long. In that moment, everything changed. Marley wasn't just waiting anymore. He was going home. New World felt both strange and magical. The woman's home was small but filled with warmth, a patchwork of old rugs, soft couches, and the scent of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Outside, a huge oak tree stretched its limbs over the yard, just like the one at the shelter. But here the leaves danced in the wind instead of casting shadows. Marley's bed was set beside the window, where he could watch the rain without fear. Safe and dry. The woman spoke gently as she moved through the house, reading aloud passages from her daughter's letters. Sometimes she laughed, sometimes she wiped her eyes. Marley lay at her feet, listening, letting the sound of her voice become the melody of his new life. Every story held a piece of the girl who had changed him forever, and Marley felt closer to her with every word. On rainy afternoons, they would sit together by the window. Marley pressed his nose to the glass, watching droplets run down the payknot. Searching, just remembering. He thought of the long days in the shelter, the endless waiting, and the girl whose patience had taught him that love was real, even when it seemed far away. With each passing season, Marley grew more at home. He chased falling leaves, slept in sunbeams, and discovered the joy of belly rubs in the living room. Sometimes he would find the blue ribbon and rest his head on it, a quiet tribute to the one who had believed in him first. Though Marley's fur turned silver with time, his spirit stayed gentle and brave. He was no longer the dog waiting in the corner unseen. He was Marley, chosen and cherished, finally part of a family. And on stormy nights, when thunder rolled over the roof and the wind rattled the windows, Marley would curl up beside the woman's chair. She'd run her hand over his head and whisper, "You're safe, Marley. You're home." He would close his eyes, content, and know in his heart that some love stories, especially those that wait the longest, shine brightest when the rain finally clears. If Marley's journey touched your heart, consider sharing his story or taking a moment to notice those who wait quietly for a chance at love. Sometimes hope is just a rainy day away. and your kindness could be the moment that changes everything for a soul like Marley's.